So Youjin Choi is the co-founder and CEO of CLASSUM. Now this is an interactive online learning platform that simplifies class communication for teachers using video, chats and learning tools. Youjin, being a graduate of Samsung's startup accelerator program C-Lab Outside, CLASSUM was showcased by Samsung at CES in 2021. Since its founding in 2018, CLASSUM has raised $7.5 million for investors, including venture capital from Korean gaming companies such as Pearl Abyss and Smilegate. The company was listed on Forbes Asia's prestigious 100 to Watch, won the HP Tech Ventures Hybrid Learning Prize, and was a finalist for the Global Edtech Startup Awards. Youjin holds a master's degree in culture technology from the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, or KAIST, and co-founded CLASSUM fresh out of grad school. Such an impressive background, Youjin, and we're blessed to have you here. Hand over to you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Youjin, as I've been introduced. I have started CLASSUM back in 2018, so I've been doing my startup for the past 6 years. I was still a student back then. I just entered grad school and I decided to start a startup. I know that startup has been a very interesting keyword for a lot of what called millennials and Gen Z. How many of you here are interested in joining a startup or finding a startup when you guys graduate? Any hand? No one. Great. It's okay. So I think that a lot of the times people ask me, why did you start a startup? I think that's a very relevant question to ask, since that is almost all my background that I have. I wanted to start with a quote from Michael Silbo. He's the founder of Twitch. I know that many of you guys actually used Twitch before, so this might be an interesting topic. So he has founded Twitch and also other startups as well. He has been a well-known startup founder. He has actually listed a couple of things that you should think about when you start a startup. So number one, why you should not start a startup. The vast majority of startups are not successful. It is really true. About 90% of startups end up failing. So even though you have a great idea, the opportunity comes, it is a 90% of chance for your startup to fail. And 70% of them fail within the 2 to 5 year period of category, which is called the death valley. So death valley is where you try to find the product market fit. Your ideas are there, you gather your team, you just want to start an idea to launch. You look for an investor, ask them why you should get funding, why your idea is the best idea in the world. So within this 2 to 5 year period, you get so much ideas and interest from people that your idea is going to launch. But within this period, 70% of them fail, which I believe that this is why it's called a death valley. So after the valley of death or death valley, there are time period that you go into your first, second, third period, and then you end up being an IPO, which is normally when you go into the market, whereas in stock market, and then you go into the public market and so on. So there are different launching stages for startups to do, but within this period where you should be most excited about, 70% of them fail. When people ask me, what does it feel like to do a startup? This is normally what I tell them. This is a quote from Reid Hoffman. He's the CEO of LinkedIn. I believe starting a startup is like jumping off a cliff and assembling a plane on the way down. Your willingness to jump is your most valuable asset as an entrepreneur. So what it really means is that you are on a cliff, you jump, and you feel like you can fly, and you start assembling the plane. You get the engine, you make the tail, you make the whatever that is actually needed to make a plane. And that's really how startup is. Because you actually have nothing. Like looking at me back then when I was in school, I did not have the fund, I did not have the team, I might not have the education, I might not have any work experiences that people might look for, but I just started a startup. So it really felt like during the way down for my 6 year period, I still feel like I'm making the plane, trying to find the right tools or right engines or right anything to be able to build this plane, to be able to lift. So that's why when I showed you this graph of startup funding and valley of death, there is a plane up there. That's when it feels like it's up there that you actually successfully built the plane. So while doing this period of the whole time, people still ask me, why are you doing a startup? There are so many different ways that you can actually build your career, but why did you actually do this? So moving on to second and third idea of why you should not start a startup. Second, for talented technical people, it is relatively easy to get a job and make a large salary. Third, large companies offer opportunity to work on a very difficult problem that often occurs at a scale. So there are 3 big reasons why you should not start a startup. And I believe that many of you guys here would end up in Ivy League school or really prestige college or universities that you can actually launch your career. And I guess that a lot of you guys have a dream to build. And this is a main reason why you should not start a startup. When I first started a startup, I had a reason why I had to. And this was the only reason why I did the startup. And I'm gonna unravel my idea of why I started a startup, but this is the main 3 question I ask a lot of people. If this is a checkbox that you need in life, you should not start a startup. Startup is not a chance to build not to earn a lot of money, not to get the fame or the success or anything that you wanna get out of. Actually, there are more easier ways for you to do. So I know that this is what a lot of people say to you when you're maybe 4, 5, or 6. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. And I feel like this is a very good quote to hear, really pleasing to your ear. But if you really look at this quote, it doesn't really tell you the reality of life, especially trying to apply it to my life, apply it to what I do. It actually doesn't really apply to anything that I have done. Because if I have imagined it, I should have achieved it way earlier in life. But still, even doing my startup, I don't feel like I've achieved many things that I want to do in life yet. And if you dream it, you can become it. There's the one keyword that is absent in this phrase, I believe, is talking about failure. Because in this quote, when you dream it, you want to achieve it, there are actually a lot of failures within this stage of what you dream of. But no one really tells you that. No one really tells you that you're going to fail, but it's okay. You fail, it's okay. No one really tells you that it's okay to fail. And I think that when I was preparing for this talk today, all I could recall myself back in college, back in high school, in grade of 10 to 12, all I could think was I should not fail. Because I went to a very traditional Korean school where I had to take the SAT, and Korean SAT only happens once in your lifetime. What your education have done for the past 12 years, it depends on one test, and if you do good in test, you will get successful. If you don't, you're a failure. And I think that's a determination factor in a lot of the Korean society that tells you if you go to good college, you succeeded. If you don't, you have not. And I feel like in high school, that was such a big thing in life. I felt like that was the only determining factor that tells me if I have achieved my dream or not. And I'm not sure if you guys sitting here today think the same, or you guys actually worry about the same thing. I know that maybe this talk is part of your educational program. I'm not sure a lot of you guys wanted to be here at all, but I just wanted to tell you guys that it's okay to fail. I think that's only one message that I wanted to bring today regarding all the experiences that I had in life. So going back to the slides that I have told you, there's 3 things that have asked me the questions of why I wanted to start a startup. So back when I was young, when I was about 8 years old, first grade of elementary school, fresh off the boat in the US, I did not speak English, I did not know the language, I did not know the culture, I did not know anything. Back then, there was no K-pop, there was no Blackpink, there was nothing there. So everyone when I was in elementary school, they thought I was a very, it was very different. There was no people of color in my school. I was the only Asian, the only person that did not speak the language. So for me to adjust in that place where everything was so new, different culture, different language, and everything was very new. And no one told me what was the right way to do it. Feeling different, feeling out of place was normal. And I should just fit into the boxes that people created for me to be more white. And I had to accept the fact that that was a reality. But it gave me a question of, then why was I born this way? Why was I born in this family? Why was I born Asian? Why am I not American enough? Why am I not Asian enough? And all this question came to me when I was very young. And I realized that maybe this is something that has to change. Growing up in a very white-dominant community with a U.S. program in education and not knowing to understand what's the difference, I had to just accept the fact that I was different. But why don't we just accept the fact that we are different and also embrace it at the same time? So I wanted to bring that into educational system. I know that you guys are taught in British education system, and I know that some students are taught in different systems, but having that different program actually forms you in a very, very different way. So for me to understand to write number 7 without a slash in the beginning, but have to write a 7 like this was very new. No one told me that was a wrong way to write the number 7. So being able to understand the difference and trying to embrace that, I wanted to create a platform like CLASSUM that was able to have many different people inside an app or a web-based platform where we were accepted on the fact that we were very different. So we are trying to break down the communicational barrier, the cultural barrier, anything that brings a barrier in communication. Because without knowing, instinctively, you actually seek out things that is different from you. So when I look at person, very instinctively, without you knowing, you identify them. Maybe he's white or black. Maybe he looks like that. Maybe she is this, or they are there. You actually identify them very instantly, and that actually brings a barrier in front of you. By bringing this into the web system of trying to break down that barrier and trying to bring people together within a name of education was something that I wanted to do. And I felt like that was something that a lot of people needed and still need today. So right now, CLASSUM is providing a service through app and web where you can actually communicate with your peers or with your students, with your teacher, or anyone that is around you, and be able to bring that root of communication and engagement together. As introduced, we are now spread into 32 countries with 6,000 different institutions, and also being awarded as the Forbes 100 company to watch in year of 2020. Being able to expand this, I've learned one thing. Failure is okay. Because when I started my education system when I was 8 years old, I failed tremendously. My teacher actually told me that I should redo my grade in first grade. And I'm not sure I'm not sure if you guys understand what that means, but in an Asian household, your teacher telling your parent that you have to redo your first grade is a very, very big thing. So failing at an age of 8, it felt really bad. Understanding that your teacher told you that for the full year that you did in your educational curriculum, you learned nothing. So accepting the fact that I have failed back when I was 8 years old was very difficult. But being able to understand that because of that failure, because of the experience that I did, I was able to earn that resilience to be able to step up and be able to do it again. So, not to brag, but end of elementary school, I graduated with honor, and I was able to do everything that I think that I could have done and achieve it, but failed a lot. Throughout the years up until where I stand here today, I'm still failing every single day. Sometimes I feel like people are looking at me to see when I fail, or see when I fall down, or see when I fail. But I feel like being able to embrace the fact that you can fail and it is okay to fail, it actually gives you power to accept the fact that you can try again. So having these different questions in life for you guys as well, maybe college is something that is really important for you, maybe a relationship, maybe how the way you look, or anything that is really important to you. Just remember that it's okay to try and fail. It's really okay to be yourself. It's really okay to think outside the box as well. Because what I do right now is something that people say that 90% of the people fail when trying, but I still tried anyway. I can still say that I tried this and learned something and talk to you guys today. Even though maybe a week from now or a year from now, CLASSUM fails, I still feel like I learned something throughout the year. And I'm pretty sure my career tells that I try to do something to change the world to be a better place as well. So I hope that this helped you guys at least a little bit by hearing my experiences. Thank you.
That was fascinating.
Thank you.
It's always so interesting to hear people's stories in terms of the projects that they've set up, companies that they've set up, how they've gone about doing it. And we've had this series of Dulwich talks. We have had quite a few people talk about how, stories in that kind of way. And also, I think there's a theme sort of emerging, which is, how you can deal with failure. Your use of the word failure. And I recently saw I recently saw an interview with a very, very young chess player who was asked about failure, and it was amazing how he responded. He said, I don't view it as failure, I just view it as an opportunity to learn how to get better, right? Which I think is basically what you're saying. But I'm really intrigued to hear, so in your company, in your startup, what was it that you were initially doing in terms of the company itself? Were you coding? What were you doing?
So I think that becoming a programmer, a coder, an engineer is such a popular job these days. People look up to people like Facebook founders, Microsoft founders, and so on. But back in, I think 10, 15 years ago, people looked at programmers as geeks. It was not a job or profession that people wanted to do. But I think as time went on with the startup boom, a lot of people want to become a programmer because they can actually build something on their own, or they get higher salary, or they have more opportunities as well. But for me to get into coding was actually, I lived my life as how I wanted to do most of the time. So in college, I actually graduated with undergrad for communications. So what it does is I wanted to become a journalist or a producer. But in my 4th grade of my senior year, our school had a new program called censored journalism, big data journalism, and also drone journalism. Those were 3 new classes that open to hybrid these different learning systems as well. So that's when I first got into coding. And when I started coding, I thought, this is so wonderful. I can actually build something, because I built my own website to upload my upload my articles, upload my YouTube videos. Everything was possible to give out messages, and that's when I got interested in coding. And I decided that I should pursue this career to a larger in more depth. So that's when I decided to go to KAIST for my graduate school for computer science.
So what led you to, I mean, as you yourself pointed out, in your presentation, probably would have been easy for you to go and get a job with a large company, a large IT, large tech firm. You probably had a great income and great salary. So what was it? What was that initial seed that in your mind you thought, okay, startup is the way to go?
So when I talk to a lot of students in university or in college or any level, and when they ask me why was it a startup? Because I could have done this at Bill Gates and Meyer Foundation. I could have done this in Meta. I could have done this in different tech firms as well who are interested in education. But the single thread that aligned in my life was education. And I knew that I had to actually step into doing this, because education is such a strong word, but at the same time, a lot of people don't take initiative of it because it does not bring enough revenue, to be quite honest. And I think that I wanted to start something that I can actually pursue and change the vision of a lot of people thinking that education is boring, or education don't make money, or education is something that should be done by the government or by an NGO. So I wanted to start this tech company that showed people that a tech company can actually change a lot of the way we live. To think about it, like Venmo, or in Korea Toss, it changed the way of banking system completely. I believe that if the government took initiative of it, it could have taken years. But with just a tech company making this program, it changed the whole law, it changed the system, it changed everything of how we actually use the banking system. And I knew that that was the power of startup, that was the power of the IT company, and that's why I wanted to start a startup. So your analogy of, and that quote, building the plane as you're falling, that sounds pretty terrifying, I have to say. Maybe break out as it's like a cold sweat. But at the same time, there must be some things that you really love about what you do. So what is it really that motivates you and drives you forward? What is it that you love the most? I think there's 2 merit of doing a startup. One is that you can actually work with people that you want to work with. So you can actually hire or gather people that are brilliant-minded to work on this project that you want to. And I think the second is that every day it's actually a roller coaster, and I actually really enjoy it because every day is a new day that you learn something. It's a new day that where you actually have to try or find a solution to a problem that you never actually had to solve before. And I think that's the way of a lot of startup founders' life, and I think that really motivates me on its own.
You mentioned earlier that starting a startup, you had to go into it, alone. You mentioned how you had no partners and no resources to use. How would you describe the process of hiring people and finding partners on your own?
That's a really good question. As a startup, finding the right partner, getting the fund at the right time is super important. And for me, I actually started CLASSUM with my co-founder, actually. Funny story, we actually met very randomly out of blue. And the first day we met, we talked about what our visions were, and that was actually the day that we started CLASSUM. So 6 days on, we are still co-founding it together. So we only knew our name, our school, and our major because we met in KAIST. So that was basically all we knew. So it was a risk of blind date type of risk, and I took it, and we've been doing it so far. So that was a very lucky situation. I do not recommend it as much, but it was a very lucky situation. And then second was we had to, our way of building the startup was making the hypothesis and being able to prove it, whether it fails or not. So that was the way that we actually built CLASSUM. Hypothesis, prove, and that's the way that we did. And while we were doing that, we started to find different outlooks that people can actually see that we have proved and have succeeded in proving. And we took that advantage of joining Microsoft's Imagine Cup, which is a really big it's the world's biggest software competition for younger generation. And we were able to participate in that, and we were finalists for the world finalist, and we went to Microsoft to be able to do our pitches. And though we found these different ways that we can actually participate in maybe awards or any programs, like we didn't participate, but like YC Combinator, 500s, Techstars, those are great accelerating programs. A lot of startups actually join in as well. So I think that we took the opportunities to be able to put our name out there and put our idea out there. And after doing that several competition in our first year, we got our first funding actually. And then from that on, we started hiring people, and leveraging your network is really important. So the people around you, people that are sitting next to you might be your next employee, your partner, or your teammate as well. So keeping that network is super important for us. So we leverage really brilliant students in our school, which is KAIST for engineering school. So we were able to take that benefit. So we did that as well. So, just having what you have in front of you, actually, you can actually do a lot more. And finding that network, that support system is really important as well. Especially in this scene in startup, there aren't that many women founders, and it's really hard to find women in STEM as well. So we try to find that network as well to be able to learn, try to find what we can do and what we can get help from. So we weren't afraid to tell them that we are not good at this. We need help from this. We need to learn from this. So we actually just put ourselves out there asking for help as well, which was really helpful. But in the beginning, it can be painful because a lot of people would like to teach you and coach you, and you have to listen to a lot of different things. And for us, in the beginning, a lot of people told us that we would fail in our first year. They told us hundreds and thousands of reasons why we will fail as well, which was really hard to hear, but being able to really take in the comments that is valuable for you and not is also really important talent that you should have as well in order to really push where you go. So I think those were the things that we did.
During your start and how successful you've been so far, what was the biggest challenge you faced to the current moment?
There is actually different challenges in different stages. From the initial challenge that we had when we actually started the startup was to make people understand why our business is going to work. Because going into a little bit more detail, we are in a field called B2B SaaS, which is software as a service, which is like lending people your software. and then they'll actually pay and subscribe for it. Instead of actually building in the program as an infrastructure into the server that you have. So it's a very, very two different way of building the software. And a lot of times in traditional universities or in corporates, they actually prefer to have the software as an SI, which is service integration. But we did not want to do that, because the reason why we did not want to do that was once you integrate the service into the server, you don't have the initiative being able to update the service or be able to change the service or do anything. And a lot of the services, the softwares that were there present do a lot of SI, and it does not update. So what I'm trying to say is that you may download an app on your phone and it's never updated for 3-5 years, and that's what you have to use. And I thought that was not good. So in KAIST College, that's why we wanted to change the service into SaaS business, where we can actually update the service as it goes and give the right service for university students back then to be able to provide them with the most high-tech valuable service that they need today. So that was number one thing that we had to convince people that SaaS using cloud is safe. I know that you guys might not understand, but a lot of people still think that cloud is not safe. So being able to make them understand that cloud is safe was number one. Number two is that while you scale, you need to be able to build a team. And as I've shown you back where it shows a different stage of startup, you need different people in that different stage. So the people that you have right now in your first year might not be relevant to you after you grow your company in 3-4 years. So being able to understand what type of people you need, even though they're such an important people or person to you now, might not be important to you in 3-4 years. Or maybe that person wants to be a director, but maybe not have that skill enough to be a director that you cannot promote them. But you feel so sad because you had them with you from the very beginning. So being able to evaluate people on a daily basis, being able to hire people that you need that moment is really difficult, because I think to myself, what am I to evaluate someone? What am I to grade them? What am I to level them out? Which is really important, but at the same time, really difficult for me to do. So even though you work with your coworker, you always have to understand that you are their manager, that you're their boss. You actually have to run the company. You actually have to have the people that is going to make your company successful. So having that as you looking at your team members, looking at your people as someone that is a great resource is something that is really painful at the same time. And I think that as the stage goes up, you have to think about that every single day, because you don't have that much bullet left in your pocket, because having that, how many bullet that you have left as equals to how many fund that you have left equals to the success, or maybe how many year or how many month that you have left for your startups to go into the winter. So I think that that's really emotionally hard as you actually keep on doing startup.
I know that the young people here in the room, there are people, they're thinking about life beyond the school year. What am I going to do? What's my career going to be? What is my pathway going to be? And I know that under this modern day and age, that sort of traditional concept of a career has very much changed. I think you're a living and breathing example of that. What would be sort of the single piece of greatest advice that you give our young people today as they're thinking about the future, thinking about their career pathways?
I think that I heard this concept. I'm not really sure who spoke about this concept, but it was really interesting for me, because if you think about yourself when you were maybe in elementary school, 8 or 9 years old, what was so important to you back then might not be important to you now. Maybe back then playing soccer was like your #1 goal, but now you might not even like soccer. So what it means is that what you think is important to you now and what you think that's going to impact you in the future might not impact you, because you change. People think that society changed, economy changed, trend changed, but a lot of people don't really think that they actually change. You're gonna grow. you're gonna learn, you're gonna change. You might think that some things are less important than some things that are to you now. And when you think about your future, maybe becoming a doctor, maybe becoming a lawyer, maybe becoming whatever your dream is right now that is relevant to you might not be as important to you when you're actually 30 years old. Maybe in your age of 30, maybe being healthy might be your #1 priority. It changes. So when you think about your career path, I really want you guys to not think that a job or title that gives you is something that's gonna be so important in life, but really think about what you want to do or what you think it's going to be impactful for you in maybe 10, 20 years. I know that when I heard about this type of talk when I was in your age, I thought to myself, well, you're not gonna be taking charge of my life. Like, why are you telling me this? Are you gonna be taking charge of my life because I go to maybe not an Ivy League school? Like, who are you to tell me this is something's important or not? I think I thought about that to myself as well because it's my life. Whatever you tell me, it's not gonna be taking charge of my life. But I really want you guys to really think that what's really important to you now, that single thread that really pulls you in life is something that I think thinking about that in your teenage year is so much important than you to figure that out in your late 20s, thinking that, oh my God, what am I gonna do with life? Because the job that you have sitting at that desk might not even be something that you want to do. Maybe some people say that going to work, earning that salary, and then getting out of work and doing something that they like is something they want to do, and that can be their life. But really think about how you want to live your life and finding that single thread that's gonna pull you is gonna be so much more important than you to think about what kind of title that you're gonna have. And I think that single thread for me was education, and that's why I jumped into a startup rather than maybe going into big tech companies that's gonna give me so much more salaries than what I receive right now. So I think about what's gonna change, what's not gonna change, and what you want to do, and what you really think it's gonna pull you through for your 20s and your 30s. Great.
I'm really curious to hear you talk about using coding as a venture. What do you enjoy most about coding?
As you mentioned, coding is a skill. It's one of the skills that you can actually use. And what I liked about coding is you can actually build something and let other people use it. So building an app or a web, you can actually deliver your message and let another person actually be the user and be able to identify or be able to evaluate the message that you're trying to give. And I think that's a very small step for you to take to actually make a little change, whether it is a game, whether it is maybe a scheduling app or whatever that you want to build. I feel like that it really gives you that initiative of that you can actually do something. Starting a business back when I think my parents' age, people really worried about building a startup or venture or a company back then. What they called was because you need so much money because a lot of them were manufacturing based and you had to actually have a factory and a lot of labor work. And that resulted in bankruptcy and other things that you might see on K-drama. But now you don't really need that. A lot of like Amazon or Facebook or other big tech companies, when you hear about their founding story, they actually started at a garage with 2 computers. So that's basically all you need. So being able to code gives you that initiative, being able to make something and make changes. And I think that's such a strong asset and such a strong skill set that you might have. Obviously, you have to be able to, do math, be able to understand some physics. If you're going to do game programming, you need to understand some algorithms and so on. But I feel like that's like the basis understanding that you just need to do. I feel like coding is very simple if you kind of understand what's an input and output is. As for me, I never did computer science for 4 years in undergrad. I just started for my grad school. So anyone who wants to code, I feel like they can do it as well, as long as you feel like you know what you want to do with coding.
Hello, 2 questions. Where do you see yourself in your company in 5 years' time? And why do you have the confidence that you'll be part of the 10% that make it?
So to answer the second question first, in 2021, Google's top-rated futurist Thomas Frey said, in 2030, the biggest company on the internet would be an education-based company that you haven't even heard of yet. And I'm really proud to say I feel like that's going to be CLASSUM. But education is such a big change in a wave right now in our society in tech field. Because as I've explained before, a lot of people thought that education was a boring field. To ask you guys all, do you want to go to an edtech company or do you want to go to maybe Facebook or Amazon? I think a lot of people will choose the latter one because it seems more exciting and fun. So education was a field where people thought there was no evolution, there was no changes, it was just there. A lot of people, when they think about education or edtech, they immediately turn to K-12 edtech system where students would learn math or English and so on. And I think with COVID, it changed dramatically because something that we call today is reskill and upskill. Everything became so digitalized. The skill set that you had back 3 years ago might not be relevant for you today. So a lot of people have to reskill themselves or they need to upskill themselves with the current knowledge that they have. And I think that really shifted the paradigm of education for people to actually understand that they have to learn as long as they're working or as long as they're living. And that's why so many different startups based in edtech has flourished while we were in that pandemic period. So within that period, we also flourished as well, not because we were an online edtech company, but because we were at the core of understanding that people need to communicate, people need to come together, people need to actually be together to be able to learn and grow as well. So we connected people and be able to tell them that being connected is so important and will help you to communicate and help you grow as well. And I think that actually J-curved our revenue. And I think that within 5 years of sales, I'm not really sure. I don't think that back in 2018, I understood that I'm going to be sitting here today at all. So I don't really look that far away. But as I've said, back 2030 is only 7 years away. So hopefully that in 7-year period, that biggest company on the internet will be us.
What is your leadership style and how has it evolved over the years since you started? And also curious to hear about how you've navigated the kind of working relationship landscape and what lessons you've learned from such a pretty conservative society, Korea, where age and the gender challenges, and how you kind of build a team and motivate a team, presumably older, male.
I think that people do see that there are minorities and that exist. I think that when we are in school in such a safe environment, and I'm pretty sure that this school is such a safe environment, I've seen the kindest school in the universe, and I think that when you're in this fence, you really don't really understand the difference that you have. But as you jump into so-called real world that they say, you actually see that difference. I don't live my life seeing myself as Asian, as young, or as a woman. But when I actually look at myself in the mirror, you actually see yourself. And that's actually the way that other people perceive you. So I live with this title on my forehead saying that I'm a woman, I am age this, or I am an Asian, I am this and this and this. So people have prejudice immediately on objectifying you or being able to see you as what skill set or what you are capable of doing based on your appearance. And I think when I first started 6 years back, there were actually less female founders than now, obviously. And being in this tech world, it actually minimized the people that you can meet. So I'm really grateful to the people that I met who understood that this difference doesn't really interfere with whatever ability I have, but to others it might have. For funding, if you're married, you have kids, I'm pretty sure a lot of VCs would be hesitant to fund you because you have a family. Maybe it's easier for you to give up because you have a family. So there are different things that I do think about myself going along this path to see what kind of disadvantages I might have because I'm a woman. And I am not facing a lot of them because I'm not married or I don't have kids. But a lot of founders with families do have these hardships of proving themselves that they're good, they're okay, they're capable. And I really want to tell a lot of female students out here to not to be discouraged. I'm not sure if this would ever happen to you guys, but really not to be discouraged whenever someone points you out that you're a woman or you're Asian or you're this race or you're this and that and that. Going into business, people might compare you because of how you look or how taller you are, how short you are, how whatever you are. People pinpoint out everything that they can do to tell you that you are not capable of. So never think like that. Second, my leadership type. So I think soft skill is so much important as a leader. Knowing your soft skill and your soft skill power is really important as well. I think that being consistent as a leader is really important. You can't be happy one day and be sad and be angry or do this and that and that. People will get confused. So whatever you hear from your teammates or whoever, you try to be very consistent. If you feel like you can't be 100% happy every single day, try to find that balance of where you can be consistent in happiness. Maybe it's 80%, maybe it's 50%, or for you to maybe change some of the words you have. Using the right word is really important to you as well. Some people might be very sensitive with certain type of words, some people might not. So being able to really tell them what you're trying to convey is really important. So for me, at my company, I try to really pinpoint the points out in a very short length as possible, but at the same time, I try to really explain or talk in a really, really lengthy way so people understand what I'm trying to convey. So aligning that different words to really have everyone aligned with the same definition of certain word is really important as well. So having that soft skill of number one, being consistent, and second, being able to align people with the message that you're trying to convey is really important. So having that soft skill and power, I feel like as the company is getting bigger, right now we're a size of 60 people, it's so much more important. And I think that as it goes to 100, 200, 300 people, there will be team members that will be able to communicate with me on a daily basis, but some people might not. So the people who don't communicate with me would definitely have maybe a prejudice, misunderstanding, misinterpretation, or anything. And I feel like being able to minimize that with the middle manager system is so much more important. So from now on, like today, what I'm trying to do is trying to align everyone together. So as we get bigger, people don't misinterpret or misunderstand what I'm trying to convey. And I think that's really important. I think it's really hard for teachers, principals, anyone, because whatever they say, whatever action they take, you might take it differently, and other person might take it differently. So having that consistency and aligning with other people is really important.
Thank you so much, Youjin. I mean, I can definitely resonate. So much of what you just described resonates with me as a principal. In terms of, I think most of what I deal with is about communication, those soft skills, and absolutely about being consistent in terms of your messaging and being level-headed throughout challenging times. Youjin, thank you so much for your time today. Let's give Youjin a huge round of applause.